All right. Hello, and welcome to today's What's New with CTY News and Updates event for CTY alumni and friends. I'm Alexa Demsky, the Director of Alumni Relations and Constituent Engagement at CTY and moderator for today's event. I want to start by saying how thankful we are for each of you for being here today, and a special thank you to the members of the alumni community who've been ambassadors for the program and gotten involved either as a volunteer, a well-informed advocate, or donor supporting an area they're passionate about at CTY. As I mentioned previously, today's event will be recorded and shared with all registered attendees once it becomes available. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, CTY Executive Director, Dr. Amy Lynne Shelton, to share program updates and news, including CTY's new strategic roadmap.
Thank you, Alexa. I'm delighted to be here and thrilled to see so many people joining us. It's always fun to kind of talk about where we are with CTY. And so I want to give kind of a range of things. I'm going to actually start by talking a little bit about where we are with our mission, our strategic roadmap, give some program updates, and then wrap that up talking about some key projects and initiatives. And of course, we'll end with talking a little bit about how we're engaged and how to stay engaged with CTY. So I'm going to jump right in. And I hope at the end of all this, you'll have some questions for us as well. So CTY has been working really hard to think about how we want to continue to grow and evolve. And so we've really been reworking our mission over the last year or so. And we've really landed on sort of a return to the heart of CTY. So we've focused in on what makes CTY unique, what makes CTY valuable to the educational community and particularly to the educational community for advanced learners. And what's fun about doing an alumni event when I get to talk to alumni and friends is so much of this is driven by the many stories, anecdotes, career paths, everything that we've heard from our alumni has really driven us back to say, what is it that we as an organization should be doing to serve our students, to serve their families, to serve, to work with our alumni and our friends. So we've crafted this new mission really around how we advance the field by serving our families and our students. And we crafted this new vision that really, it's got this kind of fun alliteration in it, which is actually an accident, but really this goal of becoming a center for innovation. And what does that mean for influencing education? But at the heart of all this is still the people, the students past and present that we serve. From this mission, we actually developed a set of what we consider sort of our CTY foundational pillars. And I want to just share those with you for those who haven't heard about them in the past. Many of these, again, are driven by the long history of CTY, but also kind of current status of the field. And they include things like really standing on the premise that advanced learners come from every community and every demographic, and that our goal really should be to serve the broad range of advanced learners. What they share is the passion for learning and the academic ability, but that they differ along many other dimensions. And that's really what makes CTY a rich place. We have long stood on the belief that you need to differentiate among advanced learners, and this is both in the content areas. So we've long had students who could qualify with us or be identified in verbal reasoning ability, in quantitative reasoning ability, in spatial reasoning ability. And then we think not only do we think of all of our students as belonging in this group of advanced learners, but that we can also then serve within that some of the different needs based on both where in the space you are and what domain of reasoning or ability you're showing. A big part of what we've been talking about most recently is how to really characterize kind of what we do for students, kind of what are the strengths of a CTY. And we really landed that in the field of gifted education, a lot of people talk about acceleration as sort of, getting advanced content, getting ahead, working with material that's beyond sort of your current grade level. And then that's been sort of distinguished from what we consider enrichment, which is about kind of going deeper, really digging into things that are maybe outside the normal content areas. And in CTY, we really do both those things, and often we pair them together. So we actually do, the majority of our work with students is really advanced content, but we put it in these novel contexts or novel approaches so that we can get that sort of enrichment piece as well. And so our courses and our offerings really vary along the dimension from sort of full acceleration to enrichment. We're really trying to be deliberate about where we want to be in that space with any given offering and for any particular population of students we might be working with within our space. Another important piece that really stems from our long history, especially in our in-person summer programs, is the facilitated learning over direct instruction. So we pride ourselves on having expert instructors who know their stuff, who really know their content, really help develop the class. And when they come to a class, what they bring is not necessarily, I'm going to just spew information to my students, but really I'm going to facilitate student learning. And we've decided to make that much more deliberate and think about exactly how you do that in different spaces, under different modalities, for different types of courses. Really focus in on making that the primary mode. That doesn't mean you won't see people doing content. Content is still critical, and being an expert in content is vital for a classroom. But really thinking about how that content gets used in a way that's really facilitating things. And again, we know that for a long time, many of our courses have really focused on this type of learning and instruction. We just want to make that more deliberate and have it run as a thread through everything we do. Another big kind of change for CTY this time, so less on what we've done in the past, is really deliberate thinking about the strength of collaboration and partnerships. So CTY has a long history of excellence in a lot of areas. We've also managed to spread ourselves thin in some ways by not acknowledging that there are strengths and weaknesses. And we're learning more and more, especially at a place like Johns Hopkins, that collaboration and partnership, both within the university and outside of it, can not only strengthen relationships, that actually build what we do in a way that lets us focus on where our strengths are. So this has been a really exciting, again, making this deliberate has been an exciting movement for us. And we're really hip deep in many different collaborations now with partners that we've known for many years and some that are brand new to us. And then sort of one of our strongest pillars that really stems from our long history is the value of community and peer networking. And again, this stems from so many stories we hear from CTY students and alumni about the impact of being in our programs. And we want to continue to make that deliberate. And we see this not only in our courses and in our programs, we see it when we come to an alumni event. We see it when we talk to our instructors who have known each other for many years, that this notion of community and that learning community is really a critical one. And we want to be able to build upon what we have as a history in this space, but also really think about how do we do that deliberately and make sure that it's happening across the board in all that we do at CTY. So those have become kind of our foundational pillars. I want to talk a little bit about just sort of program updates for people. So I think those who have been in the programs in the past often want to know kind of what are we doing now. And it's interesting because I think with respect to our in-person programs, a lot of things look very similar to what they might have in the past. So this is just kind of a quick recap of where we are. So we are gearing up for the summer programs. For those who don't know, CTY pretty much, once programs end one summer, we're in it again to start those in-person program planning again for the next year. For the coming summer, we have 11 sites. This includes 7 residential and 4 day sites. So we are at some of the sites we've been historically in Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, California, Rhode Island. This year, we've actually added a Midwest site that we're still testing out. So we hope to be in, we've started enrolling, hope to be in a site in Illinois this year, right outside the Chicago area. So that's a new territory for us. We're looking at how that's going to work. But that is a day site in an area we've never been before. Near and dear to my heart, that's actually where I grew up. So I'm excited to see how that works for CTY. So we are in full swing with the hiring, meaning that we are really trying to get all those wonderful positions filled. We're well on our way. I'll do a little plug that if there are people out there who maybe want to take a little time to work with us this summer, we are in the midst of it now, and we always welcome hearing from people who are already in our sphere. Our enrollments are looking very strong for this summer. We continue to sort of build back in a post-COVID environment. So our enrollment numbers, we took them down quite a bit to sort of react to what people were going to actually do and want in response to the pandemic and being closed for a couple of years. But we're seeing those numbers climbing again. And last summer we hit our near capacity, exceeded our targets. We're hoping for that again. We have really strong targets and we're hoping to get to those. We're well on our way. So it's very exciting. I think if you were to appear at a site as a visitor, you would see that many of these things look like they have in the past, but with some new twists. We're dealing with new issues all the time, but still creating that really nice, vibrant atmosphere. The other programs I wanted to update folks on are some that you may or may not have heard about in the past, because some of these are probably much newer for people who are alumni. And these are what we now group as our integrated programs. This is sort of a set. I'm going to talk about three different ones that are kind of our signature programs in the area of trying to really hit that reaching advanced learners across many communities. These are both internal programs as well as partnerships, and I want to share them with you. The first is what's called our CTY Baltimore Emerging Scholars Program. This is a program that's about 10 years old now. It was founded here in Baltimore City in reaction to the challenge of not seeing enough students being identified in our Baltimore City school system. So given the size of the system, we expect a certain number of students to actually be ready for CTY. Those numbers were lower than we would have liked. And so we started working with the district, and from that came this really exciting model where we're able to embed CTY courses in the schools and do more of a holistic identification approach for these programs. And then from that, these students, we look to see who actually thrives in the program. So it's a way of kind of identifying students in their setting, in the courses, and see who thrives in them. And it's been, like I said, going on for almost 10 years now. This year we have a couple hundred students who are in their schools doing it in person. We've also been running virtual sites to allow for schools that are not officially running the program within the classroom. And so we're able to reach a large number of students. And this program will continue to grow. We're also trying to develop as a model that could be used elsewhere. A second program that I want to just share with you for those who have not heard about it is what we call our USVI MAPS. So this is in the US Virgin Islands, and it is the Math Academy for Promising Scholars. This one was a reaction to something a little bit different. It was also an identification issue because that's always at the heart of what we do here at CTY. But this was one where we were looking at the numbers out of the Virgin Islands and realizing that there was a real challenge with getting any students qualified on the quantitative reasoning. And the question was why? And when we dug in with the schools there, we realized that these students were unable to show us their advanced ability because as a system, they were lagging behind the rest of the US domestic school system, particularly with respect to math. So we tried a new model. It's an accelerated remediation model, meaning that we go in and the first thing we do is try to get the students up to what would be considered sort of grade level standards by traditional US grade level. And from there, then see if we can't push them faster and into more advanced work. We do this using a co-teaching model. So there is a classroom teacher on the ground in the Virgin Islands, and then we pair that with a CTY online instructor. And those two instructors work together to decide sort of who's kind of managing what, how often does the online teacher come into the space. And it's really created these very nice relationships between sort of the boots on the ground instructor and an expert CTY instructor. I actually had the opportunity to meet with a group of our USVI online instructors yesterday, and it was just delightful to see that it's got all the same vibrancy as the our typical programs do. I also had a chance to visit these classrooms, both for Baltimore and for USVI, and it's amazing to see sort of a setting where it may not be a typical CTY setting, but the minute you walk in that classroom, you feel it. You feel that same excitement. Not every student in either of these programs rises to the level of really being able to say, this is someone who belongs in sort of the CTY sphere. So our courses are really designed for that higher tier, but many do now. And so it's a really nice way of tackling what is sort of a root cause problem. Students who lacked opportunity to show their stuff we're now finding ways to do that. So we hope to continue to grow that. The USVI program began on St. Thomas and St. John, and now is moving to St. Croix in fall 2024. So we will be covering the full range of the U.S. Virgin Islands, hopefully next year. The third integrated program I want to share with everyone is one that has been around for quite a while now, and that's our CTY Scholars Program. So don't have access to the participant list right at the moment, but we often have many of our CTY scholars joining us at alumni events. And so this program continues to be one of our strongest sort of impact programs for students who are coming from financial need. So coming from backgrounds with lower income, lower resource, but qualifying for CTY. And we currently have 35 active scholars. We cover a range of states. You'll see there that the U.S. Virgin Islands is in there. That's actually one of the reasons why we were so motivated to do that work there, is that we have historically had CTY scholars coming from the islands. We are currently accepting apps for the 2024-2025 academic year. So if folks in your sphere might be appropriate for this program, we identify students in 8th grade, for this who are not familiar, and then they get supports from 9th grade through 12th grade. And the goal is to really kind of help students get through, take advantage of CTY opportunities, and get some college advising along the way. We've been refining that program structure, really thinking about how we fund it so that we're actually changing the model to make it a little bit easier. This is a big fundraising thing for us, is getting funding for these various integrated programs. And the power of this program, for those who are interested, we actually had an alum recently featured for their academic excellence. And we see this a lot. We see these students coming through, much like CTY in general. We get these come across our desk and we see how amazing our alumni are. And these integrated program alumni are right along in that mix. So we're really not broadening what we mean by a CTY student in any way, but just we're finding more of those students in places that historically we haven't, which we think benefits everyone in the program. So those are sort of the program updates. The other thing I wanted to share with everyone is that as part of our strategic roadmap, we've established a set of strategic goals. I've got them here just so that people can see kind of what CTY is thinking about, but I'm going to share a few sort of key things we're working on with respect to projects that fall under sort of that getting back to the heart of CTY. And the first is that we are working towards a more unified course catalog. So for those who are familiar with sort of where we've been in the last year, CTY has had both a large in-person program in the summer, and then a large online program. And these two have been pretty much growing up separately. It's not that there isn't crossover. We've had instructors that crossover. We've had some courses that do, but it hasn't really been unified in a way that we can say this is sort of the continuous CTY space. So what we've done is we've made some strides towards unifying our course catalog, starting with defining what are the course models that CTY delivers and what should we be delivering. So we've been doing a lot of work on sort of saying what captures that notion of a CTY experience. And you see the little Venn diagram here where what we're really aiming for is this notion of having rigorous academics in a novel context or with a novel approach and embedding that in some sort of peer community. We really want that to come through in everything we do. So we're starting to really articulate what the different kind of course models would be, what the features of them are. And then we're looking at our current catalog and saying, how can we make sure our offerings all align with those foundational pillars, with this notion of a unified catalog. And then a big project that we're working on, and I'll talk just a bit more about that, is that we are really focused now on refining and redesigning the CTY online experience. We have a long, successful history of running online courses, and now we're at sort of a crossroads. Post-pandemic, there are more people in the space. We're looking at needs potentially changing. We're asking questions about where our greatest strengths are, and really thinking about what should a CTY online presence be. And so we're focused very much on what is the right balance of synchronous and asynchronous kinds of activities. How do you build that peer community in a space that is not typically communal? And really looking at how we might connect up experiences across CTY, whether it's summer to school year or in-person to online. How do you really make those connections for students? How can we carry the CTY experience throughout the year for our students? As part of our redesign of CTY Online, I'm going to share a little tidbit of what we've been talking with our staff, because it's a different way of, it's sort of a way of framing and thinking about what we do. So how should we think about an online presence? And in doing this work, forgive me if the terms themselves don't quite resonate with everyone, but this is how we're talking about it. We're making a distinction between what the field kind of calls online courses and what might be considered more like a virtual classroom. And again, words are one of those things we're always playing with. This is where we've landed for now. And in a typical online course, as we've thought about it and what we've been designing and offering, you have clear course objectives and measurables. You have student-driven learning. CTY is all about student-driven learning. You have what we call turnkey builds, meaning that you craft a class in a way that is very tight. You have it sort of built out from start to finish. Your assessments are built. This also mandates that you have very polished courseware. So CTY has long been sort of in the business of finding and we've even purchased courseware for our courses over time. That's very typical of an online course, and people have come to expect that from an online course. We have to have an instructor, but as a grader in an online course. That's kind of if you look at online courses out in the field and across the board, the typical role of the instructor is as a grader. And then at CTY, we've treated the instructor as also an embellishment, a facilitator beyond that. So that's been kind of one of our strengths, is that we hire and employ, we employ very strong instructors who are experts in their field. In an online course, whether a student utilizes that or not really seems to depend on the student, and not just the student's needs academically, but the personality of the student as well. It's not that different from who goes to the teacher and who doesn't in a class. But you can have a structure where you could pull that piece out and the online course could still run. We see that in a lot of our individually paced courses. And so that's sort of the online course model. What we're really thinking about is, what is the space and what is CTY's role in what we consider more virtual classrooms? So in what we're thinking of as a virtual classroom, you still have clear course objectives and measurables. That's just a mandate of education. And you need that in order to know if you're doing your job. And again, student-driven learning. All things at CTY, we feel, should have that student-driven feel. But now you have more flexible builds. You don't focus as much on having it be start to finish, ready to go. You think more about the instructor and the relationship between the instructor and their class. For those who've done our in-person summer programs, you may feel that's the kind of thing that we've always been striving for there. This means that online courseware becomes more home style, meaning that the instructor can bring their own personal sort of strengths to a developed space. So you have a developed course, but you have that flexibility for the instructor to really tailor it, not just to their own expertise, but to what they're seeing in their classroom and in their students. Now we have the instructor, we shift from sort of the grader, which is more sort of tight rubric, to the evaluator, the more qualitative approach to saying, like, how can I really work with a student? Worry less about the A, B, C, D grades and more about what are you seeing as strengths and weaknesses in a student. That doesn't mean it's without a rubric, but it may or may not be quite as rigid in terms of the type of evaluation that you do. And really, this means the instructor has to be a facilitator. So anytime you talk about it really being a classroom, even when students are working independently, the role of the instructor is as a facilitator. And I share this because this is the way CTY is trying to think. We're trying to think about, so where are we in this space? And what are the offerings we should have that feel more like one or the other? And we're spending a lot of time really asking these questions. So while this is an update on what we are doing right now is thinking and designing. And so we've actually charged our staff and a few other folks in our space with what we call our idea generator. And so we're asking people to actually think about the offerings at CTY and put forth ideas. And so I just wanted people to be sort of aware, this is the kind of work we're doing. We actually have been tapping some alumni for their thoughts. So alumni, friends, parents, and even current students to kind of ask how that's panning out. So we are looking very closely at how to do that. We have a couple other really big projects on our horizon. One is we're also, in addition to thinking about the program space, we're also really thinking about the testing world. We've had an ongoing research agenda that looks at the identification process, where it's successful, where it needs work. And we have a really exciting project underway that moves away from sort of standard testing and into a realm of really how can you watch skills as they unfold? I am a researcher at heart. That is my background. And spatial skills have been one of the areas that we know is a good marker of advanced ability. It's actually a great tool to use. You can use it in place of quantitative reasoning for many things. It goes hand in hand with those kinds of abilities. But we're really looking at it from a much more dynamic system and asking questions like, what if instead of asking you how many questions you got right, we had you do a problem and looked at the pathway you took through the problem? And we have some experience doing this historically with block building. Now we're starting to ask about it in sort of more skill-based tests that have been linked to education and that can be done online and at scale. So stay tuned for that. This project is still in its kind of development stage, but it's very complex and moving quickly. So we're really looking at trying to revolutionize what we mean by testing a student's ability. And then there are a handful of other what we consider sort of essential projects for CTY. These are initiatives and projects that are really important to that roadmap. Each of these I can talk about for long periods of time, but we've done things like we've just published a new statement around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a staff advisory council called DEI at CTY. And the goal here is to really say, this just needs to be kind of baked into the way we think, right? It's not a separate thing or a different thing. It's something that we're infusing. And hopefully you see that in the way we're talking about our programs. Those signature initiatives, now have sort of a space and are being more and more integrated with CTY, sort of what has been CTY proper. Now we're thinking them as part of CTY proper. We have this interesting project on course-based assessments. This is stemming from our Baltimore Emerging Scholars Program, but now thinking about, are there actually ways to assess students authentically in a classroom as a way of finding advanced learners? This has potential for students who maybe are neuroatypical, have learning differences, some of those situations where the test itself may be challenging. Also opens the door for younger ages because standardized testing at young ages is fairly unstable. So that's an interesting and fun project. It's opened a lot of doors for us. And then we have other things like a project on just characterizing advanced learners, getting a better feel in this day and age. What do those skills actually mean? There are just more and more tools today to understand a learner's kind of cognitive profile, for lack of a better word, and what does that really mean in our space and how we serve students. So in a changing educational environment, we want more and more tools each time. And then kind of the one that for me is kind of probably the most exciting because it helps CTY tremendously, probably the least interesting for a lot of people out there, is that we have a really important back-end infrastructure project underway. Running side by side with a strategic roadmap, we need to make sure we're designed to manage that roadmap. So we have a large, very exciting infrastructure project to rebuild our back-end systems and some of our forward-facing systems for families so that we can run more smoothly, collect better data, do our sort of continuous improvement more quickly. So lots and lots happening at CTY. I could go on, but I won't. I will instead shift gears slightly to say the other really critical piece to CTY's success is our friends and alumni. And so many of you out there, you're obviously somewhat engaged because you're here. So we're glad to be in touch with you. I've got here some other ways you can actually be engaged as well. I put the QR code here too, the alumni engagement website. And with this, I'm actually going to give Alexa a chance if she would like to jump in and say something, because this is really her space, and I'm always going to her for like, how do we share this? How do we talk about this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy, for passing it over. It's been an exciting last few years at CTY around alumni engagement and utilizing your voices and experience and stories just to really prioritize you as a community and find ways to have you connect with each other and also back with the program. So we've had things such as surveys, focus groups, regional events. We just came back from one in LA over the weekend, which was exciting to see alumni spanning years of 1985 to 2021 connecting over a delicious brunch. So these are some things that we're just starting to trickle into our planning, as well as spotlights and sharing your experiences present day. So utilizing those stories to connect with current CTYers around education, around your career exploration, and really utilizing that to pay it forward and connect with our current students. So we are always open to ideas and looking for advocates and ambassadors. So that's something in a plug that if you're interested in getting more involved, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know, because we're always open to ideas and looking for new ways to grow and keep our alumni community engaged.
Excellent. Thank you, Alexa. Yeah, see, she can say it better than I can. So with that, we're going to turn to a Q&A, but before I do, I just want to, again, just say how much I appreciate people coming out to hear what we're up to. I hope I've given you a pretty good taste. There's so much happening. We're moving at a really fast pace. Personally love it because it's exciting to come to work every day. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our moderators to let me know how we're running the Q&A.
Thank you, Amy, for sharing all those exciting updates happening at CTY. And thank you to the alumni that have joined us today. We are going to stop the recording before we start the Q&A session.